Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Braaten. I'm the Vice Chair of the Environmental Quality Commission. Thank you for coming. Apparently, the over arrow doesn't work. Okay. So the motivation for this program was to help our local habitats. I noticed there was a big problem with buckthorn in our nature areas, and I just wanted to do something about it. So started coordinating with the city originally, and then eventually I joined the EQC and wrote the volunteer habitat restoration proposal. Here in Crystal, we have what's called oak savanna. And specifically, it's called here, specifically in Crystal, we have a specific category of the oak savanna called the oak woodland brushland, which basically just means that underneath the oak trees are smaller thicket species trees. So things like chokecherries and elderberries. Those trees can actually survive in a prairie, and they commonly do. So what we have is sort of a combination of a forest and also prairie plants. And so because of that, we have a great biological diversity potential. Unfortunately, here in Crystal, there's so much buckthorn that has taken over. The habitat is just very, very degraded because of that. So that's what I was trying to.
Do you want to mention that buckthorn was intentionally planted in the 50s?
You can mention that if you want. I wasn't planning to.
Widely across the upper Midwest as a hedge.
As a decorative hedge?
Yeah. Oh. It's fast growing.
It's fast growing. I know, and the birds love it.
The birds love it, yeah. So a lot of the areas around here have either old hedges of buckthorn or lilac.
So I really wanted to think long term and community wide in this program, which is why there's an educational component. And so the idea is to help the community build a relationship to the ecosystem, and then also teach the community how to care for that ecosystem ongoing. So the hope was that in doing this, there could be new people and families passing down this, this information and this activity in the future generations.
And did you mention the walk around?
Yeah, so at the start of every restoration session, we do, I call it an interpretation. So we go through the area, walk the paths, and the people who are there get to hear about what's blooming, any plants, any animals that we see. I try to stay as informed as possible. I tell them about plants that are edible, that are also native, which is fun. Sometimes I'll do activity where I have them close their eyes and count how many birds they hear in a minute. Yeah, so that's part of developing the relationship with the ecosystem.
We also mentioned that the DNR has noted on their surveys that there are remnants of the original savanna.
Yes.
Because it's original untouched oak savanna existing where it's at Creek.
We actually have 6 of them.
Yeah.
And I don't have them listed here. But you can find them on the city website.
It's Mac Park. and Bass
All of
Creek.
our nature areas are remnant oak savannas. So there's less than 1% of our native oak savannas left from pre-colonial times. I talked about some of this already. I didn't talk about the endangered species. There are some endangered species that are completely dependent specifically on the oak savannas. Two of them are the red-headed woodpecker and the Carner blue butterfly. I don't know that we have either of those here because the ecosystems here are just very, very degraded.
We do have redheaded.
Okay, well, thank goodness.
Not a big butterfly person, so.
Well, it would be blue, so
Oh,
I don't see a lot of blue butterflies here.
But it's something to keep an eye out for.
This link is just reference to where I got this information from. Okay, so in 2008, the state did a natural resources inventory. And back then, way back then, they actually listed all of our oak savanna remnants as being in poor condition. That's a quote. So it's a long-standing issue. Officially, this program started in last year. We started in Bassett Creek Park last year, and then that project was handed off to Great River Greening because they were going to be doing the prairie installation there, where the disc golf course is. And they found additional funding to continue their work in that park and move into the area where we were removing the buckthorn from. Yeah, but this year we were in Hagemeister. And we actually got way more area cleared this year at Hagemeister because the trees that we had been clearing at Bassett Creek had been cut. And so the roots were so strong and so deep that we were digging them out and we were causing a lot of erosion sort of issues too with doing that work. But it would take 2 volunteers an entire session just to take one of those trees out. So I think more on that.
it's also true that like, just because we've been at Hagermaster 1 year, doesn't mean we're done. If you
No.
continually clear,
Right,
buckthorn will come in seeds everywhere.
right. Yeah, it's so a more recent this year study. I don't know where the study came out of, but I heard that 95% or 90% of the buckthorn seeds actually are no longer viable after 2 years. So they thought that it was like all of the seeds were good up to 7 years. And they've sort of narrowed down. Some of them can be good for longer, but
On average.
on average, yeah. Okay. I just want to highlight that this year we got so much more. It's incredible how much we were actually able to clear with just a few volunteers consistently coming throughout the season. There were 4 of us throughout most of the season, and I would venture to guess we got a couple acres done. Yes.
Getting back, is the problem at Bassett Creek Park now not a problem anymore?
So I don't think that they've actually started the restoration in the forest there yet, but they have like staff that are going to be paid to be removing.
Oh,
And they're probably going to be doing cut and treat instead of pulling them out.
Did the dog park make any inroads on that? Since they cleared such
So
a.
a lot was done
Yeah.
there. And then the way Greer Green works actually is they just administer contracts. They're going on right now to get proposals from contractors to actually physically. So,
Oh, I see. I thought, okay,
yeah, no, so they don't have people. It's, yeah.
I see. Okay. Just photos. I think a lot of people were happy or excited to see photos. Oh, wait, we're not actually to photos yet. Sorry, I thought this was the start of the photo section. I just, in this slide, I wanted to sort of detail actually the scope of the proposal that I actually wrote and differentiate that from what we've actually been doing. It's just that the buckthorn is such a big problem. That's kind of what we have to deal with first before we can do any of the other kinds of work. Habitat restoration actually does include planting as well as invasive species removal. And within the proposal, there was a number of different activities listed, such as digging holes to plant trees and planting forbs or grasses. And there are other invasive species, not just buckthorn too.
The original proposal that was presented to the council, that was a collaborative effort, correct? We all worked on it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think did I not write it and then we like discussed it and approved it?
It was a collaborative effort. There was a lot into it.
Okay,
You wrote the initial.
okay. All
It's
right,
not the grant, it was the original request.
Probably
right.
before.
The idea of the program, yeah. Yeah, this is just a couple of photos of volunteers. On the left, that's the day that the New Hope Women of Today volunteered, and one lady brought her kids and a friend of theirs. And then on the right is just proud volunteers with their tools in front of a huge pile of buckthorn. You're welcome. Okay. Demographics. When I was writing out a funding request for this program, they asked for demographics. I thought people here might be interested as well. We don't actually have a lot of racial diversity in the program at this point. Be super happy to get more people of color, getting in there with us. But we do have quite a bit of gender diversity and age diversity.
Who's in the 90+ group?
Wait, Bert, that's not you?
It's not you. No, there's an old lady who lives by Memory Lane Park that has been involved in the past. So I included that one, and she's 90, probably 93 now. So she's pretty active still. Yeah, and people with known disabilities and health conditions have been able to participate in different ways. Earlier here, the lady brought her kids. She was not able to actually do any physical labor because she recently had hip surgery, but she was there and she brought her kids, and that's awesome.
And you can sort of see my back brace and.
Yeah, back braces. Also, if people would like to help out with this stuff and you can't get down on the ground at all, you can haul buckthorn. We'd be happy to have someone just moving the buckthorn from one place to the big pile. Yes, and for people who have a hard time using the tools, we're happy to have people sitting down, pulling smaller buckthorn. And there are other invasive species too that have just require different kinds of motion. So very happy to accommodate anyone who's interested in coming. Okay, here are the photos. All right, so it says here progress in May. I just want to be clear, this isn't going to be like a May, June, July kind of thing. This just happens to be that this was in May. If you look on the sort of the left half of these photos and compare on the left side, sorry, the left photo, you can see that there are a bunch of what looks like sticks coming out of the ground. Those are all buckthorn trees. And then on the right, you can see that it's just kind of cleared.
And
We
is it
actually-
most of the work that you do early in the summer before things can go to seed?
Say it again.
Isn't most of the work that you do earlier in the summer?
Well, we run the program May, June, and July. So is that early in the summer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I guess yes. But a lot of other programs that I know about actually do buckthorn removal in the fall. And one of the reasons they do that is because the trees, the buckthorn leaves remain very green while the other trees are changing color. So for volunteers who aren't super confident with identification, that can help them make sure and pull the right things. But a lot of those programs are also using the cut and treat strategy, and we're not using any pesticide in our program yet. Yes.
I can mention, it's not really depicted here, but the sunlight dapples in when we removed a lot of that buckthorn. It really was an impressive sight to see the sunlight shine through that area that we had remediated.
Yeah, and that's part of the oak savanna is you have these oak trees, and the oak trees actually let a lot of light through. So you have a tree that's way up in the, the canopy is way, way up, and it's able to also let so much light come through that so much biodiversity can happen underneath. It's like having a prairie and a forest all in one. I think I said that before, but I love it. So this is a photo comparison of the shoreline. If you look sort of down the middle of these photos, you can see that the one on the left has a bunch of foliage, and the one on the right is sort of bare in that area. This is actually from one of the last events we held. And this one is also on the shoreline. And I think you can just see that it's sort of cleared. But the nice thing about this, especially that it's on the shoreline, there are actually a lot of plants left here. We make sure to leave the actual native plants, right? So there's actually a lot of protection against erosion. So even though we tore out those buckthorns, there are all these other plants still holding the soil together here. And if there hadn't been, I would have probably made the decision to just hold off. And yeah.
And this is where again?
This is at Hagemeister.
It's right over there.
Yeah.
Could walk from here if it weren't so dark.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just easier to see when it's not so dark.
Yeah.
So then this is just in the woodland. Yeah, I think if you're looking like at those big trees, like the big clump of trees slightly to the left of center, and then you look slightly to the right of them, you can see that there is a bunch of stuff that was cleared out there. I have to say, getting good photo comparisons is quite challenging. I really feel like none of these photos truly do justice to the difference that, because we can't even walk in there when you first, before you start clearing the buckthorn out. And then you clear the buckthorn and it's like, I mean, you can see trees that you couldn't see before, and you can actually walk in there. Anyway. So looking to the future, we have some very motivated volunteers. Something I was thinking about earlier today is, it seems to me that when a volunteer shows up for one of these, they have a tendency to come for the rest of the season. They're like, they see what it is, and there's something that clicks, and they sort of realize that they actually can make a real difference here. And they just put it on their calendar and keep coming.
It's cheaper than a gym membership.
Yeah, it is, for some people, it's a very good cardiovascular workout, yes, for most of us. At this point, we would plan to continue at Hagemeister. We have always relied on John Elholm's direction with what we do each year. I always
And
meet
John Elholm is Parks and Rec.
park director. So really it's up to him, I suppose. I have been working to try to secure funding. I went to a meeting yesterday with natural resources people, and it was a training on how to fill out this one grant. It's actually called a Good Steward Grant, and we can ask for up to 25,000 with that. And I already had everything written out and stuff. They did say that they do want as much information after each question, so they actually do want quite a bit of wording so that they get a good idea of what the project actually
Is
is.
this another grant that would be administered
This-
individually, or would we go to the city?
So it would have to go through the city, but I have sent it to one of the people that was in the meeting, and they apparently can look over it and give me feedback on it. So I'm gonna do it right this time. And there's apparently a portal, a special place, and I have everything.
Careful report.
Yeah, portal. Anyway, I think does anyone have any questions?
So going forward,
Yeah.
you're going to be basically relying on volunteers.
Yes, that's been for the most part. I'd like to get funding for cut and treat pesticide applicator. Is just for the biggest buckthorn trees.
The ones that are just too difficult to.
Right, because they just take so much time.
Right.
So for volunteers, it's just not I think it's not a very good use of volunteer time.
I agree.
And what other plants do you address through habitat restoration? There's a short list of other ones, right? It's not just buckthorn.
Right. We've been focusing primarily on buckthorn just because that happens to be the worst offender. But burdock is one. So I do have one tool. It's called a parsnip predator, and you can sever the burdock root with that. Some people think that you have to dig that out, and you don't. You can sever that root and it will actually kill the plant.
And then garlic mustard.
And garlic mustard is another. And so, yeah, and garlic mustard it typically comes after you've cleared an area of buckthorn. So we have that to look forward to.
It's another
At
invasive
Hagemeister.
species that
Oh
takes
yes, it's very
advantage.
invasive. It is edible, and the reason it came over from Europe originally. People used to make pesto with it, which is why it's here. Yeah, it tastes quite good, actually. But each plant can make thousands of seeds, and they readily germinate. So
It's endemic in the area, so you probably have it in your yard. And like
yeah,
whole hospital.
there's also creeping bellflower, which comes from Korea. The roots of that are edible, so you can guess why that was brought over.
Nightshade.
Okay. Yeah, we have some plants that are not native that are growing in our nature areas that aren't necessarily invasive. Mother's wort is one. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to cause a problem. I think they're considered to be endemic. There's also dandelions.